This is Join Us in France, episode 297. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and today I bring you a trip report with Ginny and Cristina about their trip to Normandy with 4 kids. Ginny and Cristina are mother and daughter, and the kids were a 12-year-old boy, a 9-year-old girl, a 7-year-old girl, and a 4-year-old boy. Also on this trip were Ginny's sister and Cristina's husband, so big family. We talk about so many things, as always, but to give you a little bit of taste for what's coming, they have great stories about driving in France, etiquette at French restaurants with kids, because, yeah, she was worried about it. With 4 kids, I understand. And, of course, about taking the kids to D-Day sites and what that was like. What's unusual with this family is that they have letters from Ginny's father, who had served in Normandy. They went looking for the places where he served, which is a wonderful thing to do on a trip, including Cherbourg, which we hadn't talked about much on the podcast yet. If you're interested in this topic, you might also listen to episode 101, a trip report about Normandy and Paris, 242, a multi-generational trip to Normandy and Brittany, and episode 165, visiting Normandy with teenagers. Thank you, patrons, for giving me a precious gift, the time to produce this podcast. Your monthly gift makes it all possible, and in these times of great uncertainty and anxiety, I cannot tell you how much it means to me. And a shout out to new patrons and more info on how to join all my wonderful patrons after the interview. Check out my audio self-guided tours on joinusinfrance.com/audio tours. As I record today, I have 4 of them for Paris, and I will release more as time goes by because I love the freedom and depth these tours provide. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/297, where you can see a recap of what we've discussed today. Follow Addicted to France on Instagram if you want to see the photos of these beautiful kids Ginny and Cristina submitted. I'll post them this week. And I am planning on spending more time talking to my fans via the newsletter and less on Facebook. If you'd like to subscribe to the newsletter, look for the green button on joinusinfrance.com that says extras. Bonjour, Ginny.
Bonjour, Annie.
Bonjour, Cristina.
Bonjour, Annie.
And welcome to Join Us in France. How lovely to talk to you on this sunny day.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So today we're going to talk about a trip you took to D-Day sites with your children. So that was a big group, wasn't it? Tell us who all was there.
Okay, this is Ginny. I am Christina's mom. So Cristina and her husband and her 4 children went, and so did I went, and so did my sister, Veronica. So we had 8 people, 4 adults and 4 children, so we had a good 1-to-1 ratio.
So did you do 2 cars, or did you find a van?
We did 2 cars.
Was finding a van a little difficult?
No, I thought it would be nicer to have 2 cars so that if some people got tired, if we were out doing something, that they could, we could split up if we needed to, or some people to go do something else.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Generally speaking, did you have any difficulties driving in France?
I loved driving in France. This is Ginny. I was one of the drivers, so I drove. I did not like driving in like the cities where the streets were really narrow, but I loved driving on the highways because people follow the rules, and I like that. I'm a rule follower, and I like it. And I listened to your podcast with you and your husband, and that was so helpful. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Just doing those things really, really helped a lot. But Christina can tell a little bit about her husband's adventures driving.
Yeah, this is Christina. My husband, Ryan, was the driver, and we thought everything was fine. And about a month after we got home, my husband received a ticket in the mail from France. So he went ahead and paid that. So hopefully he was worried.
So he got a ticket in the mail and he paid it. And how much was it for?
Oh, I think it was like around 100 US.
Okay.
We're not sure what it was for because it was in French. So we just paid it because he was worried. We're flying through Paris going to Italy soon, and he didn't want to get stopped at the airport for like an ticket. So
I don't think he would have, but thank you for paying the ticket. You're supporting French highways. Yeah, it's very easy to get a ticket in France because we have speed traps everywhere. So.
Oh, I did not get one, but I think it was because the car I rented had the GPS. Part of it told you like the speed limits. And it picked it up as you drove along. So even though you didn't always see signs, you could see on the dashboard the little camera thing there, whatever, what the speed limit was. So
that's really cool. That's cool. So tell us about the children that were with you. How old are they?
Yes, this is Christina again. I have a 12-year-old boy, a 9-year-old girl, a 7-year-old girl, and a 4-year-old boy.
Oh, wow. How was the flight?
My youngest was 3 when we went, and then my second youngest was 6 when we went.
Wow. So having kids so young, did that introduce any difficulties for you?
Well, we're a big traveling family. I've taken my kids the older ones to India, Panama, England, and then my youngest, he's been with us to Alaska and Hawaii and then France. So
wow.
we're very well-versed in travel.
Definitely.
To be totally honest, the thing I was most worried about was how my kids would be, I guess, treated in restaurants in Paris. I had heard that they needed to be quiet, and I didn't know if that was possible.
So what did you find? What was the reality versus what you had heard?
Oh, it was great. We didn't have any problems. Anyone who served us was very accommodating to the children. They brought out bread if they were hungry, prior to the meal coming out. We didn't have to even wait for very long. I don't think we waited hardly at all for our meals to come out. And I kind of had heard stories of like 3-hour meals, and that wasn't the case at all anywhere we went.
Yeah. So this is a problem with people telling stories about travel where they extrapolate something that happened to them to everything. So yes, you can, if you go to a fancy restaurant, you'll be there for a long, long time because they assume when you go to a starred restaurant or something a little bit upscale that you want to enjoy the evening. That's what you do. But if you show up for 4 children, we're no dummies. We have children. We know that we need to hurry it up a little bit.
Yes, it was way better than what my expectations were.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Okay, so you spend a few days in Paris, but we're not really going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what surprised me about your experience is that you took your kids to D-Day sites. And most people go to D-Day sites with their parents or their elderly relatives. So what was it like going with kids?
Well, we went for the reason that my father had served in World War II and he had been in parts of France, and we wanted to go see those parts of France. So
this is Ginny's father.
Yeah. Yes, this is Ginny's father.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
It's okay.
So we kind of prepared them a bit for that with the family stories. We had letters that my dad had written to his sister, so I was able to share some of that with the kids. And actually, the oldest grandchild, the one that's 12, we listened to one of the podcasts that you had about D-Day, and he really was interested in that. So I think we built up some knowledge, at least for the older ones, beforehand.
That's wonderful.
Also, this is Christina. They have a great book series for kids. Some of them, I think it's called I Survived. And it'll say I survived the invasion on D-Day, or something for kids, and it really works for their age range. At least the older two were able to read those. We got a lot of books geared to their age about D-Day, and so at least before we left, they kind of had an idea of what these places, what their significance was. Yeah,
that's really important, because if they have no idea, it's not like you're taking them to Disneyland where it's obvious what's happening. If you're going to D-Day sites, they need to you have to engage them in some way with the history and with the stories of people, which is why you having a grandfather in their case a great-grandfather who had served in this area is wonderful.
Yes, definitely.
And that you had letters too. That's very cool, because lots of people don't have those sorts of letters. Okay, so we already talked about your driving experience, and it went as fine as could be expected. How did you manage the hotels and the places you stay? Did you decide to stay in one place and drive around, or did you move every night?
We did. We picked one spot and stuck with it. And we stayed in Caen.
Caen, yes.
That's Mondeville, which is just outside of Caen, I guess, in the Maison Ancienne.
Yeah.
And it said in parentheses, style Deauville.
Yeah.
Deauville. Sorry, yeah. I can speak Spanish, not French. And en Normandy.
Yes, Style Deauville en Normandy. That's very interesting. So that's the description that they give for their listing on Airbnb.
And it was so cool. It was the coolest place, probably the coolest Airbnb I've ever stayed in. It had like 3 levels plus a basement, and each level had a couple bedrooms, and it was like these old wooden creaky stairs, and the bathrooms were on the landings of the stairs. But everyone had a room, and it was very wonderful.
Oh, that's good. So what time of year did you go? I forgot to ask you about that.
We went in October.
October 2019, then?
Yes.
Yes. So were most things open, or were some things starting to close?
I think most things were open. We didn't run into anything that was closed.
That's good.
We wanted to.
All right. So you were staying in this Airbnb in Caen, and from there you drove to. So you had several days. So let's talk about your Omaha Beach day.
Okay, this is Ginny. So we decided to make it so that we didn't do too many things in one day, because with the kids you have to plan for lots of extra time for them to have some running around and eating and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Getting ice cream.
Yeah, that was our number one thing. If they had ice cream, they were happy.
When there's ice cream, I'm happy too.
Yeah. So we planned one day just to go to like Omaha Beach in that area. And we thought, well, we'll see how far we get as far as going to other places. But we had like a priority. So it was to go to the American Cemetery and Omaha Beach. And that's pretty much what we did that one day. So we started at the American Cemetery at Omaha Beach. And maybe that was a really powerful thing for the kids to experience that first, to see kind of like some of the results of war, to realize that all these crosses are representing people.
Yeah. Yeah, Omaha Beach is definitely a very sobering sight, and it's very beautiful at the same time. Maybe you want to describe it a little bit, what you saw?
Sure, this is Christina. There's just fields and rows of white crosses and also a couple monuments to the soldiers. Mm-hmm. I was very touched by it, especially the level of appreciation that the French have for those people that died. And also, I thought it was really, we spent a good amount of time looking out from where they had like a plaque that showed where the invasion came in.
Yes, I know exactly the one you mean, yes.
Yes, and it was nice to be able to show the kids, right here is where this happened, and they could look out and see that. So we spent a good amount of time there as well.
Yeah, and there's also, I don't know if it's the same one, but there's there's a kind of an orientation table that shows you Omaha Beach is here, and then you have Utah Beach a little further west, and then you have Sword and I can't remember all of the names, but it shows you where everything happened along the coast.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's very good to visualize how wide an area this is, because Normandy is a really big part of France.
Yes, I didn't realize how long it took to get different places.
Yeah. As far as practical matters, I don't remember there being restaurants or cafes or anything around the American Cemetery in Omaha Beach. Did you find any?
This is Ginny. At the cemetery, we didn't really look for any, but we went from the cemetery to the beach, so that was a little bit of a drive. But when we were at the beach at Omaha Beach, we did see there was a little restaurant right there by the monument.
Right. So once you get down to the beach, there's restaurants and cafes and probably ice cream too.
Yes.
And you can walk on the beach, which is lovely. It's a lovely, wide, sandy beach.
Yes. The kids, there's that beautiful monument on the beach commemorating what happened there, but it's also like a great beach.
Yeah.
My kids loved the beach. We actually found a shark egg. It's a mermaid purse. And they were really excited about that. There were shells. So I have lots of pictures of my kids just running around the beach.
Yeah.
And the beach.
Yeah, and I mean, November, you went in October, it's a little chilly, but if you had gone during the summer, then definitely bring swimming suits and stuff, because it's just beautiful.
Yeah, well, we even enjoyed it that day. I think it was sunny and fairly warm, so.
That's great. That's awesome.
We had our shoes off and our feet in the water. It wasn't bad.
Yeah. And obviously, we didn't mention this, but Omaha Beach to Caen, where your Airbnb was, is how long of a drive? Is it an hour or so?
I believe it's about an hour, yes.
Yeah, it's a little ways, so you weren't afraid to drive. That's actually really important when you're going to Normandy, because everything is far apart.
It is, yes. Don't be afraid to drive.
Yeah, and when you get to the American Cemetery, it's very easy to park. There's a big, large parking lot. Same on the beach itself. It's a long, long beach. You might have to, drive around a little bit to find a spot, but it's not difficult to park.
We definitely didn't have a problem in October.
Yeah. And then you went to a museum that day?
Yes, this is Ginny. So after we ate, we left, and I don't know if we were headed towards something or just driving along one of the roads, and we saw that there was a little museum. It's called Musée D-Day Omaha, and I believe it was a private collection that somebody had of all kinds of artifacts that they had acquired. So we were able to go in there and look around, and they had like a landing boat or landing vehicle.
Oh.
And they had like a searchlight outside. It was like somebody's own yard kind of thing.
Yes.
It didn't really look like a museum. It looked like somebody's house.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the a big institution of any sort, does it? Yeah, it's true. In Normandy, there are a lot of these little private museums that don't look like much, but can be very interesting if you have the time.
Yes, I thought it was good for the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was good. It was short, and they also had things kind of set up in a way with mannequins, so it wasn't just stuff behind a glass.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of gave them a little more sense of how things actually looked.
Yeah. All right. What else do you want to tell me about your Omaha Beach day? Did you find any interesting restaurant that day or anything like that?
We did go to a place that had pizza.
Oh, there's pizza in France. Yay!
That was exciting for the kids.
Yeah. That's good.
And I'm not sure of the name, but it was a little farther inland from the beach, but it was very good.
Yeah. Yeah, pizza place. They're a dime a dozen. They're everywhere, and they pretty much all serve the same stuff, so it's okay not to have the name. Yeah. Did you have any troubles finding snacks and food and stuff that your kids enjoyed?
No, we went to the big grocery store in. I want to say it was a Tesco.
No, there's no Tesco. Well, maybe there's one in Caen, but
it was something like a Tesco.
Yeah.
And we got all kinds of snacks. We got Nutella. There were so many options for Nutella.
Yeah.
And in
Nutella on a stick, Nutella in a little pot, Nutella in everything.
Yes, that was very exciting for my children who are obsessed with Nutella. I think we got a lot of cookies. We did not eat healthy on this trip. And the kids enjoyed that because it was mostly cookies in the car and crackers.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's an important part of having a good time when you're visiting, when you're away from home with the kids. I'm not a very strict mother when it comes to food anyway. I never was. But I think it's really important to let them, it's a vacation. They can get back to eating their broccoli when you're home.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to have them trying different things, even if it's a cookie.
Yeah.
Well, they've tried things and they've really enjoyed. My kids absolutely love brioche.
Ah.
Favorite bread. They love it. So, it's bread, but it's different than what they can get at home.
Yeah, it's a little sweet. It's got some egg in it, so it's like fluffy and nice, pleasant to eat. They make the best burger buns in France that are made out of brioche. They are delicious.
We'll have to go back and try that.
Yes. You haven't lived until you get a French burger bun made of brioche. No sugar though. It's not sweet, but it's very fluffy. It's lovely. All right, let's talk about your Cherbourg Day. So this is important because I don't think we've talked about Cherbourg very much on this podcast at all. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that.
Well, good. This is Ginny, and I liked Cherbourg. So my dad had served in that area, and we had some photos of places that he had served where the hospital was. He was with the 280th Station Hospital, and he was a personnel officer. So he had...
So what does that mean? I'm sorry, I'm ignorant, but what's a personnel officer?
They kind of handle all this. It's almost like a human resources person.
Okay. All right. HR. All right.
Yeah, they kind of handle everything like the mail and, making sure people have things that they need, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, very important. Okay.
He also worked with the locals in hiring people to come and help, do work with the army there. And then also he worked with some of the prisoners. The German prisoners were used to help out with the hospital. So,
well, I have a grandfather who was a mailman in World War I for the army.
Wow.
So yeah.
I hope you have some good stories from that.
No, really, I never met him. He passed away before I was born, and I don't come from a family of academics or, I'm very blue collar, and it never occurred to them to write these things down, to keep it. And so I have very little.
Well, we wouldn't have the letters if it weren't for my aunt who saved them, because my dad also wrote to my mother before they were married. He was writing to her, and she threw away the letters. So
yeah. I think it's a mindset of there's some people who just don't think to preserve these things.
Yeah, but they were a treasure for us.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we picked a couple of things in Cherbourg. For me, the most important thing was trying to find out if there was any kind of museum there that would have information about this 280th Station Hospital unit that my dad was part of. And I did find a museum there. But before we went to the museum, we went to an aquarium, La Cité de la Mer.
Yeah, La Cité de la Mer, yes.
So it's right on the waterfront there, and it's an amazing place. So do you want to talk about that with the kids?
Yeah, this is Cristina. That is like the hidden gem. I was thinking this isn't going to be that great. It's probably a small little aquarium, and it was awesome. We had so much fun. It was very informative. They had a special thing about the Titanic. They also had a submarine you could go in. And then, like, the tallest tank.
Aquarium tank.
Yeah.
Ah. Wow, that's cool. So was it like, did it keep the kids interested the whole time?
Yes.
Cool.
Oh, it also had an interactive exhibit that you went through, and it, like, films you, and you're part of the show.
Yeah.
And it's like you're going underwater, like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Sounds like a fun, because they call it La Cité de la Mer, so they don't call it an aquarium. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I think the aquarium is like the big selling point, but there are other things you do there besides that. So when you go in, I guess you have access to most of the things, but you have to buy extra tickets for like the going underwater simulation thing. And
the submarine.
No, I don't think we did have to have.
You had to be a certain age though
for that. Yeah.
My younger kids could not go in the submarine.
That's a bummer. That's too bad. Oh well, but that's good to know that they have a nice museum, Musée de la Mer, and a fun aquarium. All right.
So,
what else did you do?
So at the La Cité de la Mer, they have a restaurant, so we ate there. And then after that, we were able to go to it was the Musée de la Libération. Which was up on a little mountain hill or whatever, where that Fort de Roule is.
Okay.
Which has a very interesting history to it, but there was like we were peeling away layers of an onion, and we only got to the first layer as far as stuff to see and do, and that was because we had to accommodate children, of course, but I definitely have to go back to that area. So at that Fort de Roule, they have the Musée de la Libération, and that is the one that had information about my dad's unit and, of course, other things too. So when we went there, I asked the person who was like the ticket seller about the 280th Station Hospital, and she didn't know very much, so she called the director of the museum. And he came out and he was talking, but this is like where my high school French paid off. So he said he did not speak English. So I was drawing on all my high school French, and between that and the ticket person who could speak both a little bit of English and French, we were able to communicate, and we were able to talk about some of the experiences that my dad had written about. So like there was a torpedoed ship off the coast there of Cherbourg, and they had brought the people in from that U.S. ship, and they brought the people in, and it was on Christmas Eve, so it was like a very well-documented event. So we were able to talk about those things. And that was really meaningful to me. That was like the heart of the whole trip to me.
Yeah.
Was to see these things and hear about these things.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So did he have any artifacts from that group, or was it mostly that he talked to you about it?
He didn't have a whole lot, but they did have artifacts from the Americans being there. And some of the things, when we went in and we looked, they were in glass cases, and my sister and I were like looking at things, and we go, yeah, there's the canteen that Dad had. And there's a belt that he had, and there are other items that we recognized that my father had kept over the years, and we saw them when we were kids.
Wow. That's amazing. That's wonderful. And so this Fort du Roule, so that's, I'm assuming that's a little bit away from Cherbourg, or is it within the city?
It's like on the outskirts.
Okay.
And it's way up on a hilltop, and you can kind of see from there. It has a beautiful view of Cherbourg and the harbor area. And then the other thing is, not only was my dad in the Cherbourg area, but they also were in Tourleville, which is like a little suburb there, I guess, Cherbourg. So I was asking about that, and the director of the museum was able to tell me it's over here, and this is where these things are located. And the one hospital was, I think it was a French naval hospital, and I think it's still standing, but not used as a hospital. So,
Oh, very cool. So I assume that you drove to this Musée de la Libération, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't walking distance. Okay. Did you see some other stuff in Cherbourg?
I don't think so.
Okay. In your thing, you mentioned a D-Day Experience Museum. Was this a different day?
That was on the way back from our trip to Cherbourg.
Okay, tell me a little bit about that.
So my sister, this is Ginny, my sister Veronica had found this museum called D-Day Experience Museum, and it was in Corentin-les-Marais.
Yeah.
And we got there a little bit late, so we weren't able to see everything that was there. They have like a 360 movie or something, and we missed that.
All right, so you got there a little bit late, and you missed a 360 exhibit?
Yes, and then we were able to go in. They have like a museum there that's a building that's separate. It's an old building, like an old house, and it was used, I think, by the Germans. And then there was some kind of tragic event that happened there that involved tanks. I think they were American. And the place is called Dead Man's Corner. They have an exhibit there, and it's the same kind of thing that Christina was describing before, where they have like mannequins, sort of like, large dioramas of what was going on. So that was kind of interesting to walk through there. And then they also have a separate building that's the museum. And when we were there, we had made plans to go to Assimilation, and this was the one that was the paratrooper one, where they actually took an old C-47 plane, and they have it like in this big, huge hangar, and they refitted it so that it's like a video, and it shakes, and it's all kinds of stuff like that. So you watch this simulation, and it uses like holograms, and you become part of this paratrooping group, and then you get your directions, your mission, and all that, and then you go into this plane, and when you're in there, like the windows are like little screens of what's, airplanes flying by and the flak going off and everything. And so you're part of this, and the plane's shaking, and you eventually get shot down, which is not a happy thing. But I think Teague talked about how that impacted him.
So you were telling me about how your son talked about this experience.
Yes, actually, the oldest and the youngest, I think, were most impacted. The oldest, he just felt like he could understand more the emotions involved if you were flying into a war zone and paratrooping an airplane. But the best part was the youngest, because he was 3. He's like, we were in a plane crash. And so when he came back to go to preschool, he told his preschool teacher that we got in a plane crash. Little confusing. It was a little intense for little kids, but
Yeah.
he seemed fine. He wasn't real concerned about being in a plane crash.
Sure, that's just normal. We walked out, we were fine. Wow. That's cool. So now I need to mention, and I forgot to do this earlier, is that Cristina, you also have a podcast called Kidtastrophe. So were there any kidtastrophes during this trip?
Yeah, for sure. There's at least several each time we go anywhere. So I guess that would be one. Would be the that we were in a plane crash.
Right.
But the other one was, yes, due to travel, kids tend to get upset tummies. There's a lot of new foods, and even just things made in different places have different, microbes in them.
Yeah.
And our youngest, he's potty trained, but he didn't quite make it one time when he had to go number 2. So I think the biggest thing with my podcast is that you should always carry extra underwear.
Good advice.
So yes, very important.
That's good advice. So tell us a little bit about your podcast. What kind of stories do you do?
So similar to yours, I interview people with their stories of hilarious kidtastrophes. It seems like almost everyone who has kids, even if they didn't travel internationally, has had something happen. Whether it's they need to go to the bathroom in a tin can on a road trip, or you have something, a kid that won't wear clothes in Italy, or something like that. So
what would you recommend as a seasoned mom traveler? What would you recommend people consider when they travel with their kids?
Oh, I have 2 very good tips. One I already shared, but the second one is keep your expectations low. Keep them very low, and then you won't be disappointed. Don't expect kids to get as much from a trip as you want them to.
Sure.
Don't expect that somehow my oldest son's life will be changed because he now understands World War II and the sacrifices that were made. We had some great conversations with him, but he's still not. He's still a kid.
He's still 12.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that's why don't ever expect those things, especially like if you ask my kids, like, what was your favorite thing in France? They'll say, oh, the Nutella. Something that you get at home.
Yeah.
So.
No, but that's how it works with kids. They have completely different perceptions than grown-ups, and so for them, what's important is different.
That's right. Yeah. And always bring extra underwear.
Yeah, and snacks. And drinks. Yeah. I think what's important also is to just build family memories, even if kids forget a lot. Later, sometimes it comes back. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but one day my daughter, who was about 12, 13, came back from school, and she says, oh, today at school we talked about Athens. And didn't we go to Athens? And why didn't you take me to see the caryatids? And I'm like, what do you mean we didn't take you? Of course we took you. And she didn't believe it. And so I pulled out my pictures and I show her a photo of her in front of the caryatids. And I'm like, you were right there. You just weren't paying attention, and she was making a face, of course, in that photo. Like, how kids do in photos. And so it's good to help them realize that as kids, they miss a lot. I used to tell her, don't be so sure, you're missing a lot. And she wouldn't necessarily believe me, but if you show her enough examples, maybe she'll believe you. Anyway.
That's true. Yeah, if you've got pictures to prove it.
Yeah, I'm like, well, look at this. You were right there. You just forgot. You weren't paying attention. Pay attention. Anyway. All right. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for talking to me about your experience with your kids in Normandy. I think it's very wonderful when people can travel with their kids and their grandparents too, because it really builds the relationship in a way nothing else can do it.
Yeah, that's the reason we travel, is because it's so important for kids to realize that their little corner of the world isn't like everywhere else, and they need to learn about other places and other people and other ways of doing things.
Yep. So merci beaucoup to both of you, and hopefully you'll get another chance to come to France with your kids once this whole pandemic is over.
Absolutely.
We would love to do that.
We can't wait.
Au revoir.
Merci, Annie. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Again, I want to thank my patrons for supporting the show and giving back. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so. You can see them at patreon.com/join us. Patreon. Join us. No spaces or dashes. Thank you to all of you for supporting the show. Some of you for many years now. You are fantastic. And a shout out this week to new patron Glenda Cash. Nice to have you on board, Glenda. My thanks also to Casey Amistad, Dolores McNair, and Teresa Toos for sending in a one-time donation by using the green button on any page on Join Us in France that says Tip Your Guide. Teresa wrote, I have thoroughly enjoyed every podcast I have listened to. It is my dream to someday visit your beautiful country and see the sights and taste the delicacies you talk about. The summer lunches was the best episode yet. Keep up the great work. Yeah, she's mentioning, I think it was episode 295. Where we talked about food in France in the summer. And I also want to say thank you to Carlos Vera Laruchea for buying all 4 of my tours via joinusinfrance.com/audio tours. This used to happen all the time, but in these pandemic times, it's rare enough to take notice. And by the way, you can buy the tours today and take them next year. They will not expire. And you can also listen to them from home. I've added a lot of photos to the Marais tour so you can see what I'm talking about on the screen. Don't forget, you can also support the podcast when you make purchases on Amazon. Just go to joinusinfrance.com and click on the Amazon ad at the bottom of any page. Voila, you're helping the podcast and it doesn't cost you a penny more. For my personal update this week, well, I'm still staying at home and I must confess that it's getting a little bit old. But with this pandemic going on, that's what feels safe for the time being. I enjoyed 2 audiobooks this week, one by Donna Leon. It's one of her Commissario Brunetti books called The Golden Egg, which I got on Audible. And the reader, who is an English guy, did fine with the Italian. His one problem was saying the name of the murder victim, David. He got it wrong the first few times. He said his name Davide, but he fixed it later in the book to say Davide, which is how you say the name. Davide in Italian. I'm a little bit of a language snob. As you know, English is not my native tongue, and I do try very hard to pronounce things properly anyway. I don't always get it right, and I know that, but I try and I practice. And I have a hard time when audiobook readers don't even try. So it was my pleasure to help BJ Harrison with his French. He's the reader of the second book I enjoyed this week. He has an audiobook store online, but he also releases lots of classic books for free as a podcast. It's called the Classic Tales Podcast. He reached out to me a few months ago to ask for help with a list of French names and expressions that I recorded for him. And he's got a really good ear. He got most of them right. The book he was reading is called Scaramouche, and it's a book by English author Sabatini. So this book takes place soon before the French Revolution, and it is a mix of lofty French political ideals, adventure, romance, noblemen behaving terribly and being called to account, and sword fights, of course. It's very entertaining, not heavy on the history, but a good historical novel with lots of details about life in France back then. Look up the Classic Tales podcast. There will be a link in the show notes as well. Last week, I wondered if more people would stay home in August, and I think the answer is yes. I'm sure there will be stats and articles published about this in a few weeks, but it seems to me that there are an awful lot of people around my village this August, a lot more than in previous years. The numbers of hospitalizations and deaths from COVID-19 are not going up right now in France, but the number of new infections is definitely going up too fast. And it doesn't surprise me. People are on vacation and they're mingling, and that's what happens. The percentage of positive tests is also going up. It was 1.4% last week, I think, and now it's 1.7%, I think. It's not a huge increase, but it's going in the wrong direction. So for now, the pandemic is still under pretty good control in France, but there's no guarantee that it'll stay that way. I'm afraid we're going to have to get used to wearing masks and carrying hand gel, and also to continue to seriously limit who we socialize with. I have no idea when normal is going to be back. I will welcome it with welcome arms when it does. But in the meantime, we might as well settle into this strange pandemic way of life and see where it takes us. One other new thing for me this week is that I'm taking care of a dog temporarily, well, possibly for a few months. His name is Swiffer, and he's from the Toulouse dog shelter. This dog has issues, okay? He got adopted at age 5, having spent most of his life at the Toulouse dog shelter. So most of the dogs who stay at the shelter that long never get adopted because they have problems. But with a little help from Prozac and a lot of consistent care from the person who rescued him, he's adjusted really, really well. The reason why he ended up with us is that his owner, a friend of my daughter's, she has the opportunity to go study abroad. She's 22, just like my daughter. The plan was that her mother would take the dog while she's away for a year studying abroad. I know her mother. She's a wonderful person. Unfortunately, the mother was recently diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, and she just started chemo. She can barely take care of herself, let alone take care of a rather large dog with issues. I didn't realize how hard chemo is on the body until I talked to her over the phone. I mean, you hear that, right? People tell you that chemo is really hard on the body. But when you know the person and she's so lively and great, and then boom, chemo, and then she can barely talk. It's really startling. So I decided to help out and take Swiffer. And that'll continue until either the mother feels better or until the daughter finds accommodations where she can have a dog, which is not easy in Wales, but she will try. And she's going to be there until, the end of the school year, which would be June 2021 at the latest. But hopefully, she can get her dog back before that. We don't really have this dog problem when rentals in France. Of course, nobody can have a dog in a student dorm, even in France. But if you arrange for a private rental, they don't even normally tell you if you can have a pet or not. It's not even mentioned in the rental agreement. It's just accepted that people have pets. Now, if the dog is destructive, there are provisions for destructive tenants, be they 2-legged or 4-legged. But dogs are not singled out typically in France. When we rented our house in France years ago, we arranged everything at a distance with the help of my sister who used to live in my village. We had Luna, my standard poodle at the time. And when the owner came to give us the keys of the house, he met Luna and he didn't even bat an eye. We hadn't told him that we were coming with a dog because my sister said, you don't have to and don't do it. And she was right. But really, the owner didn't care. Legally, he can't do anything about it anyway. But he didn't care. He just, he wanted his money for the rental, and that was it. And he wanted us to take good care of the house, obviously, not be destructive, but that's a different issue. So that makes it a lot easier to have pets in France. So if you move to France someday, you can plan on bringing your pets. All right, this is going to be it for me this week. I'll be recording 2 new episodes next week. Still working on the book and enjoying that very much, and on Patreon rewards as well, and trying to stay cool in this heat wave. If you enjoy the show, introduce a friend to the podcast and show them how to listen. Next week on the podcast, an episode with Elise about the Bois de Boulogne near Paris and what an interesting place it is. I had no idea. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week. Stay safe wherever you are, and I'll talk to you next week. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2020 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.